I am begging you. You are my friends. You are my family. I did not ask for the prophecy. I did not ask for any of this. Please.
She has taken our destiny. Push her.
Wait. She's our friend. We cannot do this.
She took what was supposed to be ours. Do it.
Adayeza, we have been friends since we were 6 years old. Please, I am begging you. Please.
She begged them. They pushed her anyway. You cannot push a prophecy off a cliff. Nobody was ready for what came next.
Every village has its daughters, girls who grew up beneath the same sun, drink from the same stream, carry their water pots on the same road, girls who learn each other's laughter before they learn their own names, who share secrets in the dark because the dark belongs to no one and therefore to everyone. The village of Abara had 4 such daughters, and for a long time, a good, uncomplicated time, they were simply that. 4. Ngozi. She was the kind of beautiful that made people pause mid-sentence. Not because she tried, though she did try, and she knew it, and she wanted you to know she knew it. Her skin was the deep, even brown of river clay at dusk. Her eyes caught light from angles that did not make sense. When she walked into a gathering, heads turned the way flowers turn toward heat, without thinking, without choice. Ngozi wore her beauty the way some people wear wealth, openly, deliberately, as both shield and invitation. She was not unkind, but she had learned very early that beauty was a currency, and she had never been given reason to spend it carefully. She had a laugh that filled rooms, and a tongue that sometimes cut. She called it honesty. The others called it something they did not yet have the courage to say to her face. Chidima. Her father was the wealthiest trader in 3 surrounding villages. Everyone knew it because Chidima made certain they did. Not loudly, but in the way of someone who leaves doors slightly open so you can see what is inside. Her wrappers were always the finest. Her sandals were not bought from the market stalls, but ordered from the city. When a new fabric arrived in Abara, Chidima worried fast. When a celebration was held, her family's contribution was always the largest, and her father always made sure it was announced. She was generous in the way that people are generous when generosity has always been easy. She gave freely because giving reminded people of what she had, and she had learned from her father that money, properly displayed, could buy most things. What it could not buy, she had not yet needed, so she had not yet known this. Adaze. Nobody could outspeak Adaze. Not the elders, not the market women, not the men who gathered under the Udala tree and believed that their conversations were the only ones that mattered. Adaze had an opinion on everything, and his voice that carried across 3 compounds without effort. She was ambitious in a way the village found uncomfortable and admirable in equal measure. She wanted things, loudly, specifically, without apology. She wanted to be remembered. She wanted her name to mean something beyond the daughter of so-and-so, the wife of whoever comes next. She was not afraid to push. She was not afraid to be seen. She walked into every room as though she had been invited to lead it, because in her mind, she always had been. And yet, for all her noise and ambition, there was always someone who did not move for her. Someone in the room whose stillness drew more attention than Adaze's words. That someone was always Amara, and Adaze had never said this aloud, but it lived in her small and sharp, like a thorn lodged too deep to pull out cleanly. Amara. She did not announce herself. That was the first thing you noticed, or rather, the first thing you noticed after you had already been noticing her without realizing it. Amara simply existed in a room, and the room became more honest for it. Not quieter, not smaller, just more real.
She was not the most beautiful, though she was lovely in the uncomplicated way of women who do not think much about it. She was not the richest. Her family's compound was modest, their meals simple, their name respected but not prominent. She was not the loudest. But people listened to her. Truly listened, the way you listen when you sense that what is being said will matter. Elders paused when she spoke at gatherings. Children followed her without being called. Women who had never confided in anyone would find themselves confiding in Amara before they had decided to. She carried something that could not be named easily, a quiet authority, a grace that did not compete for space because it did not need to. She was the 4th friend, and in the beginning, that was simply what she was, the 4th, the quiet one, the steady one. None of them understood yet what she truly was. They had been friends since they were girls small enough to hide behind the same palm tree. They had grown up trading secrets at the river, covering for each other at festival preparations, sharing the warm, easy currency of young women who have not yet learned to be careful with each other. Their friendship had texture and history. It had inside laughter and old grievances smoothed over. It had the particular comfort of people who know each other so well they have stopped performing. On the eve of the festival of Ofo, the four of them sat together behind Ngozi's mother's kitchen, as they had done 100 times before, shelling Ede and talking about everything and nothing. Ngozi examining her nails.
I heard the priestess will speak at the gathering tomorrow. A real prophecy, not just blessings. She speaks every 3 years. It never means anything. My mother says this one is different. She has been fasting for 7 days.
Chidima, raising an eyebrow.
7 days? What could she possibly have to say that requires 7 days of fasting?
Quietly, without looking up from her work.
Maybe it is not about what she will say. Maybe it is about being clean enough to carry what she has been given.
A small silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just a pause that Amara's words sometimes created, as though what she said needed a moment to settle before the world could move again.
Amara, you always say things like that.
Amara, half smiling.
Like what?
Ngozi laughing.
Things that make me feel like I should have thought harder before I opened my mouth.
They all laughed. Even Adase, who had about to say something sharp, laughed instead and let it go. That was the thing about being together. It smoothed the edges, made the small competitions and the quiet scorekeeping feel like nothing, like imagination, like uncharitableness towards people who genuinely loved each other. In that moment, behind Ngozi's mother's kitchen, with the smell of Ede and evening cooking rising around them, they were simply 4 girls who had grown into 4 women who still sat together and laughed. No one was more, no one was less. But tomorrow was the festival of Ofo. And tomorrow, everything would begin to change. Some endings begin in the middle of laughter. Some distances begin when people are still close enough to touch. None of the 4 friends knew this yet. They finished shelling the Ide, said their goodnights, and went home to sleep. Easy, unburdened, as people sleep when they still believe that tomorrow will simply be more of today. It would not be. The festival of Ofo came the way it always did, with noise before meaning. By dawn, the village square was already alive. Women arrived with clay pots balanced on their heads and children balanced on their backs. Men dragged out the old wooden benches that only appeared for gatherings like this. The smell of palm oil and roasting yam moved through the air like something with intention. Drums spoke in the distance, not yet urgent, not yet ceremonial, just warming up, the way old men clear their throats before they say something important. The 4 friends arrived together as they always did. Ngozi wore the color of ripe cashew, red, orange, impossible to miss, which was entirely the point. She had oiled her skin that morning until it caught every angle of light. Chidima's wrapper was imported fabric, the kind that whispered money when it moved. Adeaze was already talking before she had fully entered the square, greeting people loudly, inserting herself into every cluster of conversation with the ease of someone who has never once doubted their welcome. Amara wore deep indigo. Simple, clean. She walked in beside her friends and drew no particular attention to herself. And yet, 2 elder women near the entrance paused their conversation as the 4 passed. Their eyes moved across Ngozi, Chidima, Adeaze, then settled on Amara. One of them leaned toward the other and said something low that no one else could hear. Amara did not notice. Her friends did. The gathering was full by mid-morning. The entire village arranged itself in the old way, elders at the front, men behind, women and children fanning out toward the edges. A hush arrived slowly, the way hush always arrives in large crowds, person by person until silence has the whole room.
Then the priestess came out. Her name was Mama Chinyere, though most people simply called her Ezenwayi, the woman chief. She was not tall. She was not loud. She wore white from neck to ankle and moved through the crowd the way water moves, finding the path of least resistance, touching everything gently, leaving nothing unchanged. She stood at the center of the square and closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, she looked at no one in particular, or perhaps at everyone. It was difficult to tell. She began with the usual blessings: safe harvest, healthy children, rain at the right time, protection from enemies both seen and unseen. The village responded in the old rhythms, the call and answer that had been going on longer than any living person could remember. Then she stopped. Something shifted in her face. The elders who were watching her closely straightened in their seats. When she spoke again, her voice was different, lower, slower, as though the words were being placed rather than spoken.
Among the daughters who stand here today, one will rise beyond this land. She will sit where decisions are made. Her voice will carry farther than the drums of this village, farther than the roads that leave it, farther than the names of the men who built it.
The square was absolutely still. Mama Chinyere, after a long pause, said,
But her rising will be paid for, in blood not her own, in betrayal that comes wearing the face of love.
Nobody moved.
Let the one who knows herself receive this. Let the ones who fear her examine their hearts. What you do with what you feel, that is where your own destiny is written.
She closed her eyes again. The drumming resumed, soft and uncertain, as though even the drummers were unsure what just happened. No name had been spoken.
That should have made things simpler. It did not. Because within minutes, the square was doing what squares have always done when a prophecy arrives without a name. It began assigning one quietly, quickly, through glances and gestures and the particular silence that falls when a group of people all arrive at the same conclusion and no one wants to be the first to say it. The elderly women near the entrance had already moved. They stood closer to where Amara sat, not approaching, not speaking, simply orienting themselves toward her the way compass needles orient toward north. Mama Chinyere herself, moving through the crowd afterward, accepting greetings and placing hands on heads, paused when she reached the 4 friends. She looked at each of them in turn. She said nothing to Ngozi, nothing to Chidima, nothing to Adaizi. She placed her hand briefly on Amara's head, closed her eyes for 3 seconds, then moved on without explanation. 3 seconds, enough. Not looking at Amara.
Did you see that?
Chidima, equally quiet.
Everyone saw it. It means nothing. She touches many people. She touched us too. She did not close her eyes for us.
Silence.
Please, it is just a blessing. She's an old woman who touches heads. Do not make it into something it is not.
Adaizi, turning to look at Amara fully, something unreadable in her expression.
You are very calm for someone who was just singled out in front of the whole village. I was not singled out. No, of course not.
She said it without heat, without obvious bitterness, just those 4 words, flat and even, that landed like a stone dropped into still water. They walked home separately that evening for the first time in memory. Not because anyone decided to, not because a fight had broken out, simply because Ngozi lingered to speak with someone, and Chidima drifted toward another group, and Adaize found a conversation she needed to lead. And Amara walked home alone, unbothered, thinking about the priestess's words the way one thinks about weather, as something that arrives, that you cannot control, that you simply move through. She did not feel chosen. She did not feel afraid. She felt only the cool evening air and the sound of the drums fading behind her and the ordinary, peaceful weight of a day that had ended. She had no idea what had just begun.
Prophecy does not change people. What changes people is watching someone else receive what they believed was meant for them. That night, in 3 different compounds, 3 friends sat with their thoughts, and the thoughts were not kind. Jealousy does not arrive with a name. It arrives as something quieter, something that disguises itself so well you can live with it for weeks before you understand what you have been feeding. It arrives as a second glance, a shift in the chest, a smile that comes half a second too late, a compliment that costs more to give than it should. It arrived in 3 different women in 3 different ways, but it arrived for the same reason. In Ngozi, it arrived as invisibility. She had never been invisible, not once in her life. She had walked into every room and owned it, not through effort, but through the simple, undeniable fact of her beauty. Beauty had been her identity for so long that she had stopped distinguishing between the two. But after the festival of Ofo, she began to notice something she could not name at first. When she entered a space with Amara, people greeted them both, but then their eyes settled on Amara. Not with the quick, appreciative glance that Ngozi received, but with something deeper, something that lasted, the kind of attention that was not about how a person looked, but about what a person carried. One afternoon at the market, an elderly woman reached out and touched Amara's hand as they passed, unprompted, unrequested, and said softly, "There is something on you, my daughter. Guard it well." She did not look at Ngozi at all. Ngozi laughed it off. Then she went home and sat in front of her mirror for a long time, looking at a face that had never failed her, wondering for the first time if it was enough. Ngozi, to herself, quietly in the dark of her room.
I am the one they have always seen. Why does she make me feel like I am disappearing?
No one answered. That was the problem. There was no one to blame, no wrong that had been committed, no moment she could point to and say, there, that is where the injury happened. The injury was simply Amara existing. And that was the most maddening kind. In Chidima, it arrived as disrespect. She had always been able to purchase proximity to importance. Her father's name opened doors, her family's money softened faces. When she contributed to a village project, the announcement of her name carried weight. She had confused this with being valued. She had confused being useful with being chosen. After the prophecy, the village began paying a different kind of attention to Amara. Elders invited her to sit closer during discussions, not because she demanded it, not because her family's money placed her there, but simply because they wanted her near. Young women came to her for counsel. Mothers pointed her out to their daughters. Nobody pointed Chidima out to their daughters. Chidima to her mother one evening.
Mama, do you think the prophecy is truly about Amara?
Amara's mother, without looking up from her work.
The elders seem to think so, but she has nothing. Her family has nothing. How does someone with nothing rise above everyone?
Amara's mother, quietly.
Perhaps that is exactly how.
Chidima did not speak for the rest of that evening. She sat with the answer and found she hated it. In Adaze, it arrived as fury. Not the loud, honest fury that could be spoken and released. The cold, quiet kind that has no outlet because it cannot be admitted without exposing everything beneath it. Adaze had spent her whole life pushing toward visibility. Every word she spoke, every opinion she held, every room she entered with her chin raised, all of it had been movement towards something. Recognition, influence, the sense that she mattered beyond the narrow borders of Abara village. And now, a woman who did not push, did not speak loudly, did not enter rooms with intention, had been handed, by a single moment of an old woman's hand on her head, everything Adaze had been reaching for. Adaze, to Ngozi and Chidima, one night when Amara had gone home early.
Tell me honestly, do you believe it? That she is the one?
Ngozi, long pause.
The elders believe it. That is not what I asked. Whether we believe it or not does not matter anymore. The village has decided. And when the village decides something, the village is wrong sometimes. The village has been wrong before. What are you saying, Adeze? I am saying that destiny is not a river. It does not flow only one direction. Things change. Circumstances change.
Nobody said what was actually being said, but all three of them heard it. The confirmation came on the day of the harvest ceremony. The chief elder stood before the gathered village and announced that a young woman from among them had been chosen to represent Abara at the regional council, a seat of real influence, the kind that led in time to more. It was an honor that had never gone to someone so young, never gone to a woman at all. He called Amara's name. The village erupted, genuine joy for most, the uncomplicated celebration of people who believed something good was happening. Amara stood slowly, stunned, her hand over her mouth. The elder priestess nodded once from her seat, as though this had always been the arrangement. Amara's eyes found her friends in the crowd. Ngozi was smiling, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Chidima was clapping, but her hands were slow. Adaize was perfectly still, her face arranged into an expression of calm that cost her everything to maintain. Amara saw none of it. She was too overwhelmed, too full of something bright and frightening to look carefully. She would never know what she missed in that moment. 3 days later, Adaize came to her with warm eyes and a warm voice.
We want to celebrate you. Before you go, the four of us, one last walk to the old ridge, like we used to. You don't have to do that. You are our friend. Of course we do. It will be like old times. All right. Yes, I would like that.
She would like that. She trusted them. She had always trusted them. The easy, unexamined trust of someone who has never been given a reason not to. That was the thing about Amara.
She saw people charitably by default. She assumed the best because she herself intended the best. It had always been her greatest strength. That evening, it became the thing they used against her. The ridge was beautiful in the dying light. The four of them walked the old path in something close to silence. Not the constable silence of before, but the weighted silence of people carrying things they cannot put down. Amara walked at the front, looking out at the view she had loved since childhood. Below, the village was a pattern of rooftops and cooking smoke. Beyond it, the road that would soon carry her somewhere new. She did not hear what was decided behind her eyes. She did not feel the moment shift. She only felt, for one suspended second, hands, and then air, and then the terrible, rushing absence of ground, and then nothing. They stood at the edge and looked down into the darkening ravine below. Chidima, her voice thin and strange.
Is she?
Adaeze, turning away first.
We go back. We say she fell. We say we tried to reach her.
Ngozi, not moving, staring down.
Adaeze. Ngozi. We go back, now.
They went back. The village grieved. Searches were conducted. The ravine was steep and the undergrowth thick. And after 2 days, it was agreed, quietly, painfully, that Amara was gone. The prophecy, it seemed, had died with her. The three friends wept in public. They held each other. They accepted the condolences of neighbors who did not know what they were consoling. And in the private dark of their own minds, each of them waited to feel relief. It did not come. What they did not know, what none of them could have known, was that the ravine gave way to a river. And the river gave way to the hands of a stranger. And the stranger had kind eyes and a steady voice and a home far enough away that the news of Amara's tragedy had not yet reached him. Destiny, it turns out, is not so easily interrupted. You cannot push a prophecy off a cliff. You can only delay your own reckoning with it. The river did not kill her. The water that received her was fast but not final. It carried her downstream the way rivers carry things they have decided to keep. Not gently, not carelessly, but with a purpose that has nothing to do with the thing being carried. She was found at dawn by a fisherman who ran for his prince. His name was Kolade. He was not a man who announced himself, unusual for a prince, and perhaps why he had never quite fit the role his father imagined for him. He was thoughtful where royalty demanded performance. He listened more than he spoke. He had a stillness that people sometimes mistook for distance, and that was in truth simply depth. He came to the riverbank and found a woman he did not know, barely alive, her indigo hapa torn and muddied, her hand still curled as though holding something she had not yet let go. He carried her himself. He did not wait for servants. By the following day, she had opened her eyes, dark, clear, entirely present, and looked at the ceiling of an unfamiliar room with the calm of someone who had survived something and not yet remembered what. Kolade, seated beside her, quietly said,
"You are safe. You are in the village of Idu. Do you know your name?"
A long silence. Amara, her voice rough and searching.
I don't know it.
That is all right. These things come back.
How do you know?
Because you look like someone who does not lose things easily.
She did not know what to do with that. So she closed her eyes and slept, and somewhere beneath the sleep, something that had a name continued quietly being itself, waiting. They called her Ada in the meantime. It meant daughter. It meant nothing specific, which made it safe. She healed slowly and then quickly, the way strong things heal. Reluctantly at first, then all at once. The memory did not return with the body. It sat just beyond reach, present but inaccessible, shape without sound. What she knew was this: the household of Idudu, the sound of an unfamiliar village settling into evening, and Kolade, who came every day. Not to question her, not to push, but simply to be present in the unhurried way of a man who has decided a person is worth waiting for. Kolade, one afternoon, watching her sort herbs with the healer's wife.
You know what you are doing with those.
Amara, looking at her own hand, surprised.
I suppose I do.
The body remembers what the mind has set down. It keeps things safe until you are ready.
Amara, quietly.
And if I am never ready?
Then the body will decide for you. It always does.
She looked at him the level, unguarded way she had always looked at people, which had always made those around her feel seen and sometimes afraid of being seen.
You are not what I expected from a prince.
What did you expect?
More noise.
He laughed, open, unperformed. She found she liked the sound of it.
Time passed the way it does when two people are slowly becoming necessary to each other, almost invisibly, and then all at once, obviously. She sat with the elders when they debated village matters. She said quiet things that cut to the center of problems, and they listened the way people had always listened to her without knowing why. Kolade's father watched and said nothing. Not yet. Kolade said to his father one evening,
I want to marry her.
The king. Long pause.
You do not know who she is.
I know exactly who she is. I do not know where she is from. Those are not the same thing.
The king studied his son, the one who had never bent toward pressure, who listened more than he spoke, who was in all the ways that mattered the finest of his children.
Bring her to me.
The meeting was short. The king asked 3 questions. Amara answered with the quiet honesty that had always been her nature. Honesty that had nothing to prove, and therefore proved everything. When she left the room, the king looked at his son.
Wherever she is from, they lost something when they lost her.
The memory returned on an ordinary morning. She was standing at the edge of the compound looking south when something in the early light shifted, the particular gold of dry season dawn, and it came back not gently, but all at once, like a door blown open by wind. The village of Abara, the festival of Ofo, the priestess's hand warm on her head, her name called before the whole village at the harvest ceremony, the walk to the ridge, 3 warm voices, 3 women she had loved without condition. And then the hands. She stood very still and held something enormous and said nothing. Kolade found her an hour later. He knew immediately. He did not ask if she was all right. He simply stood beside her and waited. Amara, very steady, which was the most frightening kind of steady.
I remember all of it.
What do you need?
She turned and looked at this man who had pulled her from a riverbank, waited without demanding, loved her before she had a name to give him.
I need to go home.
Then we go.
What happened there? It will not be simple.
I did not say simple. I said we go.
She nodded, the quiet, decided nod of a woman who has survived the worst thing and is now walking toward the truth of it. They arrived in Abara on a still morning. No procession, no announcement. Just a woman in clean cloth, walking a road she had walked 1,000 times, a prince at her side, her memory fully restored and her back fully straight. The first person to see her stopped walking entirely. Then the word moved through the village the way fire moves through dry grass. First one place, then everywhere, too fast to contain. Amara is alive. Amara has returned. By the time she reached the village square, a crowd had gathered, and somewhere inside that crowd, faces draining of color, knees losing their certainty, were 3 women who had stood at the edge of a cliff and believed they had finished something. They had not finished it. They had only postponed the moment they would have to face it. That moment was now. Destiny does not forget. It does not hurry, and it does not tire, and it does not negotiate with fear. It arrives on a still morning, wearing the face of the woman you tried to destroy, and it simply waits for you to decide what kind of person you will be when the truth has nowhere left to hide. The reckoning had come to Abara, and it had come wearing indigo. If you followed this story to the very end, I truly appreciate you. Please take a moment to subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. And before you go, there's another beautiful story on your screen right now. Go ahead and watch. I promise it's worth your time.